Hello, and welcome to Ask the TA, a periodic segment on HCAT where viewers can send questions for the town administrator and other town representatives to answer for the benefit of all Holliston stakeholders. This is the first installment, and I'll introduce my guests after we read the first question. The question from the viewer is, what is the Comprehensive Long-Range Plan Committee, now known as Envisioning Future Holliston, and what has the committee been up to since its creation last May, the May of 2021? To answer that question, we have Stacey Raffi, Chair of Envisioning Future Holliston, representing the school committee, and Ben Sparrell, a member of the group representing the select board. Stacey will give us background on Envisioning Future Holliston, and Ben will go through some recent survey results. Finally, Stacey will discuss next steps and what residents and stakeholders can expect as we approach the May 22 town meeting. Welcome, Stacey. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
We are going to get into some background on the group, and what we have here is how people can find information.
So, thanks for having us. We're excited to share our work. The Comprehensive Long-Range Planning Committee came about through a petition at town meeting last year, through a citizen's petition. And the point of that petition was really a conversation that's been going on for years in different silos of different boards and committees. And that conversation is the town needs a vision. We need something that we can look to as boards and committees when we're making policies, budget, plans, studies, et cetera. So it's really something to tie all of our groups together so that we're really collaborating and not just working in individual silos. So the group came together as 17 individuals representing all of the different boards and committees, whether it's planning board, sustainability, conservation, parks and rec, schools, the finance committee, select board, everybody. It's a large, large group of 17 of us working to come together with a vision and a report to share with you at May Town Meeting 2022. So our group is broken out into different subgroups. So we have a branding subgroup. That group has been working on putting this website together, creating areas where you can ask questions, giving you the background of us, why we were created, our mission, surveys, et cetera, really a branding of the committee. And one of the things you alluded to earlier was we're also known as Envisioning Future Holliston. Comprehensive Long-Range Planning Committee, say that 5 times fast, is a little bit of a mouthful. So we were trying to really sort of have a tagline or a name for us that would capture what we're doing. The next group is the outreach group. So that group has people who are looking for ways to really touch all people in the community. So it's not just a survey. We're trying to do some forums, some meet and greets. Unfortunately, this fall we saw, the increase of Omicron, and so we really backed off from doing a lot of public events, but we hope now with the good weather and our numbers changing that we can do some real outdoor activities and outreach to really get and talk to a lot of people.
That's great.
The other group is the survey committee, and they're the ones who are actually writing the survey. And so that's one of our other subcommittees. And then finally, we have our data group. And our data group, they are analyzing all of the data from the surveys, the survey results that we have so far from Survey 1, as well as they're looking at the historical data that we have in town. We have we have a 1998 study, downtown study. We have strategic plans from some of the groups. So they're looking at all of that and trying to sort of meld it together so we can create this vision.
Great.
So we just completed survey number 1. That opened in November. It closed in January, and Ben will share more details on that. But we were happy so far with the results, and we look forward to survey 2.
Great. Thank you so much, Stacey. And before we get to Ben, let me just point out, as we show here, that you can go to the drop-down menu and find that under Comprehensive Long-Range Plan Committee. Additionally, in the search bar at the top right, you could put in Envisioning Future Holliston, and you'll get right to the website as well. The group has also used QR codes to drive traffic to this, and that has been out on social media. And so that has led as part of what was the initial survey, which Ben will get into in one moment. As you can see here also, that Stacey went through, is the mission, which is on the website. Findings and the previous documentation is also up there, all through their website. So thank you very much, Stacey, and we'll now move to Ben for some highlights on the first survey.
Sure. So the data subcommittee did a deeper dive in what the results were from this particular survey, and just have to give credit to all those folks on the subcommittee. There's Rich Rosenberry, Barbara Peaty, Peter Egan, and Pat Boyd, who is not a voting member, but she was participating as well. So I wanted to say a particular thank you to all of them for all their help in putting this together.
Great.
So just a quick overview of what we're going to talk about here. Just talking about the methodology and overview of how the data shook out, and then we're going to look at some word clouds about things and some conclusions that we've drawn from the first survey as it went forward. So the first thing we want to look at is just what is the purpose of this initial survey, and the high-level look is to try to determine what matters to the residents of Holliston. What do people like about being in Holliston? And we gave people 11 choices, categories of things within the town to rank, and the idea was to make sure that we weren't going to see everything be important. We wanted some sort of a method, so people had to start selecting within that to determine what was the most important thing to them to the least important as they went through. The idea here is to try to build a vision statement from these survey results. So as Stacey had indicated, the survey opened in November and closed in January. Most of the survey responses were online. People filled them out via a Google document, I believe, and it was accessible through a QR code or through the town's website directly. We did have a couple responses on paper from the senior center towards the end of the time it was open, and we wound up with 400 total responses. There were a couple responses, 10 emails that had 2 responses. My inclination is they're probably households. Somebody might use a household email address, something like that. There were certainly some results where some people picked more than one item as number one. So there were quite a few, out of 400 responses, we had 618 number ones in there. And a few had no number ones, and a few had multiple number one items. There's actually one person who put everything as number one. And as you go through some of the questions that were asked, there were some long form questions that were asked, and not everybody answered every question.
Okay. And so for the ones that have multiple number ones, how do you handle those results?
So, I mean, we saw more than one number one. We didn't see it on the other side. So the way I look at it is that people see that multiple things are important to them, that they see that those things matter and that they should be treated equally as opposed to something else. And it was the real meat of this survey is the long form questions and being able to really look at those and really see what kinds of things people care about. So they might say downtown, well, I really care about sidewalks, or I really care about sewer, whatever it is. And as we go through, you'll see some of those responses.
Great.
So the results we saw, the top ranked of the categories, those 11 categories we had, was the schools. The average respondent put it around 3. And 1/4 of those number one responses put the schools as number 1. And number 2 was the environment, and number 3 was business. Environment includes a couple different elements, which, as I put down in the note there, it includes like water resources, open space, and agriculture will fall into that environment category. And then there's a clustering of public recreation, connectivity, character, and town services somewhat in the middle. But everything had some number one responses, and the range is pretty close together in terms of how people looked at all of the categories.
This is a golf score. You want the lower score?
Yes, in this case, it is definitely you want the birdie, not the bogey.
Gotcha.
So we asked a couple questions about the respondents, and one of them we looked at was age, and we had very strong results from between 35 and 49-year-olds and 50 to 64-year-olds, and it sort of tapered off a little bit as they got a little bit sort of on the margins. And this is helpful for us as we go through survey number 2, is to try to reach those people, to try to find other actions we can take to make sure that those people are heard from particularly. But we did get a very good sample of everybody in town across the board. So we feel comfortable with these results and being able to move forward.
Great.
One of the other questions we looked at was whether or not the responder had children in the home. And so there was about 54% of the people who responded said that they did have kids. And you can see some of the things that would matter more to them. Schools mattered more to people with kids in the home than people who did not have kids in the home, which is pretty much what you would expect from that particular group. So, but for the most, there was a little bit of variation between the two, but you're seeing some of the age-appropriate responses panning out in some of these other questions, like if the responder had kids.
Right.
And then further, we looked at how long somebody's been in Holliston. So it's safe to assume somebody's been in Holliston for 20 plus years, they're probably a little bit older, and they might not have kids. And so that's where you see it's more likely to skew away from schools and more towards being senior friendly, which is what we're seeing as results. So one of the things we did with the long form responses is it's easy enough to read 400 responses or however many for each of the questions, but the challenge becomes is to try to eliminate some of the bias that we don't have internally. I mean, some of the things that are important to me, I'm probably going to notice those things. It's that phenomenon where you have a red Volkswagen and suddenly you see red Volkswagens everywhere because you're paying attention to those particular things. So we wanted to try to find some way to take those responses and put them into a data rich format and illustrate quantitatively what people are saying, and then we can go back and qualitatively evaluate them as we build the second survey. So there's a couple questions that we looked at. So the first one is, what qualities of Holliston do you value? And you see a lot of the things that I think a lot of us would emphasize: small town, downtown, sense of community, school system, small business, green space, rail trail. Certainly things that we would expect. I see small town a lot there. There's definitely a lot of people who like the small town charm and like the fact that it's that's the feeling of the town, amidst some of the bigger towns around us. And the next one, looking at what the town areas people think that we should focus on. We see infrastructure, we see sidewalks, new high school, water quality, downtown, taxes. So some of the things that we certainly hear from. I know from where I sit on the select board, I certainly hear some of these things on a weekly basis. And these are the things that a lot of people who responded said are important and that we want us to emphasize as policymakers. And then when we look at a future Holliston, again, same kinds of things. It continues to have a nice downtown. We want to have good schools, business friendly. Developing other restaurants that it's walkable. So we're certainly seeing some of those same characteristics throughout these answers. And then finally, when we ask, what other areas are not listed in the survey, one of the things that doesn't say is actually, we see it more than once, is you got everything. You got everything in the survey. You answered all the things that we want to see. So but some of the things that people want to look at: Holliston, noise, diversity, inclusion, recreation, some of those other kinds of things that maybe we might need to start evaluating and asking deeper questions about.
So is that safe to say that that's where the group is going now for a second survey, is based on this word cloud of what was not listed in the first survey?
Partially. I think there's a couple different things. This is part of it. Part of it is also, as we look and build a vision, I think what we need to get from the second survey is to understand how people want us to reach those goals. They might say that, for example, that the downtown is great, don't change anything. And that's a different conversation than we need to do X, Y, and Z, and we need to have some of these things change. So that way, we as policymakers can take that and either, okay, we're doing a good job now, or, oh, hey, maybe we need to change and pivot, and we're thinking about the right places, maybe we need to think about them a little bit differently.
Great.
And then just to recap, we got to 400 people. And again, this is a survey is trying to tell us what matters to residents, and how these goals can be achieved is really the focus of the second survey. And I think we could probably move forward to try to build a vision statement from a lot of these responses, and that's probably going to be our goal for the next few months to try to reach. And for the second survey, we want to try to reach as many people as we can and try to fill some of the gaps that we met with as we look at some of the age groups, for example, to try to see if we can reach those folks that we didn't have as much success with. We did a lot of social media with this, which was very successful, but it reached a limit. So I think we need to sort of get a little outside the box and find other ways to reach some other people, so everybody can be heard in the second survey, which was really a lot more detailed and critical for as we move forward.
Great. And I mean, your background obviously is in data, so I would say, it seems like from your presentation to the full committee that you feel comfortable with the results and drawing some conclusions on Survey 1, and that you have ideas of what all of the groups, the subcommittees, seem to be trending in the same direction of what they'd like to see for Survey 2.
Yeah, and I think we have a pretty good idea of, I certainly would hope that we could get some more responses in some of those areas and make sure that we hear from those people. But there was a lot of consistency across a lot of the responses, which makes me feel comfortable not, even if with smaller responses in certain groups, because there was a lot of consistency with the groups that did respond. So it gave us a position that we're not going to, adding more people isn't going to dramatically change the results. But it is important to make sure that we capture as many people as we can for the second survey.
Right, so one of the lessons we learned is for the second survey, we for sure will have hard copies available at the senior center and the library. And that's so we can capture people who may not, feel comfortable filling something out online. So that for us will be a goal for survey number 2. The other thing we want people to do is we want to make sure that they go to the website and register to sign up with us for updates so we can include them on our next mailing of the survey. There's so many more voices that need to be heard, and we want to hear them. And we certainly will be setting updates out about different events, maybe some meet and greets, maybe some coffee and conversation with the clerk, things like that. So we definitely want people to sign up so we know how to reach them, and they can also send us email from our page as well. So we want to hear from people.
Great. And so the community, for anybody coming to town meeting on May 9th, will hear a report as the mission states that the group will report to town meeting in May of '22. And so that would, it seems where you're trending right now for a survey number 2 most likely won't be the end of the story, but it will be an update. And that we would probably most likely hear from you again as well in October of '22 with the survey results of survey number 2. Is that?
Yes, for sure. There's definitely more work to be done. And we want to spend a little more time making the survey what we need it to be asking. And May is going to be here right around the corner, so lots of work to be done.
Well, this is very impressive, and we're looking forward to that in May. And thank you so much for being here to make sure that everybody on the HCAT audience is updated on all the good work you've been doing. Is there anything that you'd like to add at the end?
Just reach out to us. There's 15,000 people in town. We had 400 respondents. Definitely reach out to us so we know how to reach you.
Great. Thank you very much, Stacey and Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching the first segment of Ask the TA on HCAT. We hope you found it informative. If you have a question that you would like answered in a future segment, please email us at the address on the screen. Thank you for watching.